Dear friend, as September arrives, the air begins to carry that gentle in-between feeling where the warmth of late summer lingers, but the mornings greet us with a cool hush. If you sit for a moment on your porch with a cup of tea, you can almost hear the garden shifting its rhythm. The bees move a little slower, the light falls more golden across the leaves, and the soil itself seems ready to rest. September is not about rushing or working harder. It is about easing into a softer pace where gardening becomes less about bending and hauling and more about small touches of care that make a big difference. You don't need youthful strength or a wallet full of supplies to keep your space thriving in this month of change. What you need is imagination, patience, and a gentle hand. Even the simplest acts, saving seeds in an old jar, tucking fallen leaves into a compost corner, or refreshing a tired pot with autumn color can carry a deep satisfaction. This is a time when gardens give us permission to rest alongside them, to prepare lightly, and to savor beauty without strain. So today, let's walk together through 20 September gardening tips that make life easier. They are not about perfection or heavy effort, but about wisdom, gentleness, and finding joy in the simplest tasks. Think of this not as a list, but as a shared afternoon in the garden where each idea comes with a story. A touch of creativity and a reminder that your hands, just as they are today, are still capable of creating beauty. Dear friend, do you remember the way a dining table feels after a big family meal? Plates stacked high, crumbs scattered across the cloth, and the gentle sigh of contentment in the air. Clearing it may seem like a chore, but once the table is fresh again, it opens space for the next gathering, the next memory. That is what clearing away spent plants in September feels like. Your summer crops, tomatoes that grew wild and generous, cucumbers that sprawled across their trellis, or beans that gave bowl after bowl have offered their abundance. By this month, they may look weary, leaves spotted, or curling stems tangled in exhaustion. Instead of seeing them as a mess, think of this as their farewell gift, the chance to clear them gently and make way for what's next. The task itself doesn't have to be heavy. If bending feels hard, bring out a sturdy stool or even a lightweight garden bench to sit as you work. A simple pair of garden scissors is all you need. Snip stems at the base rather than pulling them with force. This keeps the soil calm and leaves the underground life undisturbed. If the plants are healthy, you can chop them into smaller pieces and tuck them into your compost, letting them continue to serve in another form. If disease touched them, yellowing leaves from blight, for example, it's kinder to bag them and set them aside for disposal so the illness doesn't return next year. I recall my neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, a woman in her 70s who tends her backyard like it's a patchwork quilt. Each September, she goes through her raised bed, slowly talking to her plants as though they were old friends. She thanks them for their service, cuts them down gently, and always leaves behind one or two little surprises, a late pepper, a small squash, which she cradles like treasures. She told me once, "It's like putting my children to bed after a long day." I don't rush it. Watching her, I realized that clearing plants is not just maintenance, it is ritual. It is a way of honoring what has been given and making room for what's to come. When you step back after this gentle clearing, you'll notice something remarkable: space. The soil suddenly breathes again, ready for lettuce, kale, or perhaps just a blanket of mulch to rest through the winter. You may even find joy in how tidy and open the garden feels, the same way a fresh tablecloth prepares a room for gathering. And in that cleared space, you'll see possibility, an invitation to plant something new, to sow seeds for fall, or simply to rest, knowing the garden is cared for. This first tip sets the tone for September gardening. It isn't about labor. It is about letting go, respecting cycles, and finding beauty in the pause between seasons. Clearing spent plants is not the end of summer's song, but the opening notes of autumn's quieter melody. With each plant you thank and remove, you give your garden permission to breathe and yourself the chance to move forward with lightness. Dear friend, have you ever opened an old jewelry box and found a keepsake from long ago? Perhaps a brooch passed down from your mother, or a button you'd saved from a favorite coat. Small things, yet carrying entire stories within them. Saving seeds in September feels much the same. These tiny capsules of life are more than just future plants. They are memories, continuity, and hope, all held inside a shell you can balance on your fingertip. By now, many of your summer flowers and vegetables are drying out their blooms, fading, their pods splitting. Instead of sweeping them away, pause and look closer. A dried marigold head crumbles to reveal dozens of thin black seeds. A brittle green bean pod rattles softly with its cargo of future meals. Even a towering sunflower, now bending heavy with age, offers a center packed with seeds that can become next year's golden parade. The act of gathering them is as calming as folding laundry or shelling peas. No rush, no pressure, just you, your basket, and the quiet company of the garden. The process is simple. Carry a few small envelopes or repurpose old spice jars. As you gather, label them with a pen so your spring self will thank you later. Sit at your porch table or kitchen counter and gently remove the seeds, letting them dry in the open air for a few days. Once they are crisp to the touch, tuck them away in a cool, dry drawer. Each jar or packet becomes like a time capsule, a promise waiting quietly through the winter. And the best part, this costs nothing but your time and even saves money you might have spent at the nursery next year. I think often of a friend named Harold who planted zinnias every year in his front yard. One September, he carefully gathered their seeds, storing them in a simple cigar box. The following spring, he shared handfuls of those seeds with neighbors, saying, "Plant these, and you'll have a bit of my garden in yours." Walking down his street the next summer, you could see flashes of the same cheerful flowers in every yard. Saving seeds, then, is not just practical. It's a way of passing on beauty, of letting your garden ripple outward into the lives of others. And there's something deeply comforting in this cycle. As we age, we understand the importance of what continues beyond us. Seeds embody that truth perfectly. They remind us that endings are never final. They are beginnings folded in small, unassuming shapes. By saving seeds, you are both honoring the summer that was and preparing for the spring yet to come. Each tiny seed you tuck away is a whisper that says life will return and beauty will bloom again. Dear friend, September often feels like a second chance in the garden. Just when we think the season is winding down, it quietly offers us another invitation, the chance to grow cool weather crops. It's like discovering there's one more chapter in a beloved book when you thought the story had ended. Lettuce, kale, spinach, radishes, and carrots are among the vegetables that don't just tolerate the cooler days ahead, they thrive in them. Their flavors grow sharper and sweeter with a touch of autumn chill, almost as if the air itself is seasoning your meals. The beauty of planting these crops in September is how forgiving they are. You don't need large spaces or endless energy. A raised bed, a few pots on the porch, or even a shallow tray on a sunny windowsill can provide enough room. Scatter the seeds, gently cover them lightly with soil and water with a soft hand. Within a week or two, you'll see tender green shoots lifting their heads like a quiet encore after the summer performance. For older gardeners, these cool weather crops are especially kind, easy to plant, quick to sprout, and ready to harvest without months of waiting. I recall visiting my Aunt Clara, who well into her 80s kept a little fall salad garden on her patio. She used nothing more than a few old dishpans with holes poked in the bottom. Every September, she'd sprinkle lettuce seeds and tuck in a few spinach starts. By October, she'd proudly serve her guests salads grown right outside her door. She'd always say, "There's nothing like eating green when the trees are turning red." Watching her enjoy that ritual reminded me that gardening doesn't have to stop when summer does, it just shifts its rhythm. Cool weather crops also offer the gift of health and nourishment at a time when our bodies welcome warm soups and hearty meals. Imagine chopping fresh kale into a stew on a chilly evening or plucking crisp lettuce leaves for a sandwich. These small harvests, born in the golden light of September, carry a comfort that store-bought greens can never match. So don't let your garden beds or pots lie empty. Let September be your reminder that growth continues even in the cooling air. By planting cool weather crops, you're not only extending your harvest, but also giving yourself the joy of fresh food when the world outside is preparing to sleep. It's a simple act, yet it speaks deeply. Life doesn't end with change, it adapts, and in adapting, it often grows even sweeter. Dear friend, if you've ever tucked a child beneath a quilt on a chilly night, then you already understand the comfort mulch provides in September. As the days shorten and evenings cool, your garden soil begins to lose the steady warmth of summer. A simple layer of mulch becomes that quilt holding in moisture, protecting roots and easing your plants into the new season. It is one of the most powerful yet gentle things you can do, and it asks so little in return. What counts as mulch? Almost anything natural at hand. Shredded leaves from your own yard, straw gathered from a feed store, wood chips from a neighbor's pruning, even pine needles that have fallen at your feet. You don't need to buy expensive bags. In fact, September is a time when the garden gives you mulch freely. Just look at the first leaves drifting down, already offering themselves to the soil. Spread them lightly across flower beds, around vegetable starts, or even in pots. They'll act like a cushion, conserving water so you don't need to carry the watering can as often, and keeping roots cozy when the nights dip lower. One of my neighbors, Mr. Hernandez, once showed me his method. He raked his fallen maple leaves into a pile, ran over them gently with his mower, and then used them to blanket his entire vegetable garden. He laughed and said, "It's the only quilt I own big enough for my backyard." By spring, those leaves had broken down into the richest soil you could imagine. Watching him taught me that mulch isn't just protection. It's transformation, turning what looks like waste into nourishment. And for those of us who may not move as quickly as we once did, mulch is also a gift of ease. It cuts down on weeding, so there's less bending and pulling. It reduces watering chores, sparing our backs and our time. In every way, it makes gardening less about struggle and more about peace. As you scatter your mulch this month, think of it as tucking your garden in, preparing it for the rest ahead. Just as we add a blanket to our own beds when the seasons change, mulch becomes the quiet comfort for the plants we've tended. It whispers to the soil, rest, keep warm, and gather strength for tomorrow. Dear friend, do you remember how families once gathered around the kitchen table? Children grown, parents aged, and the stories passed down to keep everyone rooted. Dividing perennials in September feels a little like that, passing strength along, making sure the family line continues and giving each plant its own place to thrive. Perennials like hostas, daylilies, coneflowers, and irises often grow crowded after years in the same patch. By autumn, they may look tired, not from weakness, but from having too many voices in one room. Dividing them now ensures their stories continue, each plant with space to sing again. The task may sound heavy, but it doesn't have to be. Begin by choosing a cool morning when the soil is soft from rain. Bring a small spade or even a hand fork and work gently. If the clump is large, don't feel you must lift it all. Simply slice off a manageable piece from the edge and replant it elsewhere, or share it with a friend. For older gardeners, raised beds or containers make this work lighter. No deep digging, just lifting small sections with patience. Water each new planting well, then add a little mulch blanket around its base. By spring, the divisions will rise strong and refreshed, as if grateful for the breathing room. I'll never forget visiting my cousin Elaine one September afternoon. She had a single iris bed that had grown dense and stubborn. Instead of seeing it as work, she invited her grandchildren over. Together, they dug small pieces, wrapped them in newspaper, and handed them out like gifts. "Plant this in your own yard," she told them, "and every spring you'll think of me." Now, scattered across her family's homes, purple irises bloom each year like living postcards of her love. Dividing plants became more than gardening, it became legacy. What I love about this practice is the balance it represents. We don't divide perennials to weaken them. We do it to strengthen them. The same is true in our lives. Sometimes stepping back, sharing a piece of ourselves, or making space for others doesn't diminish us, it multiplies our presence. Just as one iris becomes many, one act of care ripples outward into beauty we may never fully see. So if you have a clump that looks worn or overfull, don't sigh at the labor. See it as opportunity, both for your garden's future and for the joy of sharing. September offers the perfect moment, cool enough for roots to settle, warm enough for them to establish. Dividing perennials isn't about loss, it's about renewal, generosity, and planting reminders of yourself in places that will bloom long after you've moved on. Dear friend, do you remember the way we once ushered children indoors when the first autumn chill rolled through, reminding them to grab their jackets before running out again? Bringing in tender plants in September is much the same. gently guiding them to safety before the frost taps them on the shoulder. Many potted plants we treasure through summer geraniums, begonias, ferns, or even a lemon tree on the patio are not built for the cold. Left outside, they would wither at the season's first frost. But with a little care, they can continue to brighten your home through winter like guests who've been invited to stay longer. The process doesn't have to be rushed. Begin by checking the forecast and acting before nighttime temperatures drop below 50 degrees. A soft cloth or old rag can be used to wipe leaves, removing dust or tiny pests that might hitch a ride indoors. If lifting heavy pots feels daunting, use a rolling plant caddy or ask a family member to help. Some gardeners even repot large outdoor plants into smaller containers, trimming them lightly to fit. Place them near sunny windows or in a quiet corner where you'll see them each day. I once knew a woman named Ruth who had a passion for fuchsias. Every September, she lined her porch with pots, deciding which ones to welcome inside. She treated it like an adoption ceremony, chuckling as she said, "These little ones are coming in for the winter." Inside her living room, the plants became part of her decor, a thread of summer that never quite ended. Neighbors who visited often remarked how cheerful her home felt, even in the gray of January. It wasn't about perfection, it was about continuity. A reminder that beauty doesn't need to stop with the season. For those of us with limited space, even 1 or 2 tender plants can make a difference. A single pot of herbs on the windowsill allows you to pinch fresh basil for soups. A geranium in bloom near your favorite chair can brighten gloomy afternoons. These little companions become more than plants. They become company, steady and alive when the garden outside falls quiet. Bringing in tender plants is more than saving greenery. It's about preserving continuity, carrying the spirit of summer forward, and reminding yourself that care extends beyond the seasons. Just as we shelter those we love, our small acts of protection for plants mirror the tenderness we still carry within. Dear friend, do you remember raking piles of autumn leaves as a child, only to jump into them with laughter? Those same leaves, once a playground, are now one of the garden's greatest gifts. In September, as trees begin to loosen their summer coats, leaves drift gently down, carpeting the ground in shades of gold, amber, and russet. Instead of treating them as waste to bag and drag away, think of them as tomorrow's nourishment. With a little patience, fallen leaves can be transformed into compost, dark, crumbly, and full of life that will feed your garden for years to come. Starting a compost pile is simpler than many imagine. All you need is a corner of the yard or even a bin or barrel. Gather the leaves into manageable piles. Shred them with a mower or simply crumble them by hand. Smaller pieces break down faster. Layer them with kitchen scraps like vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, or eggshells. Alternate brown materials like leaves and twigs with green ones like food scraps and grass clippings. Add a little water if the pile feels dry and turn it gently now and then. Over time, the pile will heat, settle, and slowly transform into the richest soil amendment nature can provide. My neighbor George, now in his late 70s, swears by his leaf compost. Each September, he patiently gathers the leaves from his big oak tree, smiling as he says, "The tree feeds me twice, once with shade, and again with compost." By spring, his bins are full of dark, sweet-smelling compost that he sprinkles into his vegetable beds. His tomatoes are legendary in the neighborhood, and he always insists it's not his skill, but the leaves that deserve the credit. For older gardeners, composting also offers something gentle. It removes the burden of hauling heavy bags of yard waste while creating a cycle that feels deeply satisfying. You can work at your own pace, rake a little, pile a little, and let time do most of the work. And unlike fertilizers from the store, compost is free, safe, and endlessly renewing. When you tuck your hands into finished compost months later, it feels like crumbling chocolate cake between your fingers. That texture is the result of patience, of letting nature do what it knows best. September leaves remind us that nothing in the garden truly ends. Everything transforms. By composting fallen leaves, you're not just tidying your yard, you're turning memories of autumn afternoons into the promise of next year's growth. Dear friend, have you ever tried pulling a stubborn weed in the middle of July when the soil is dry and hard, and the roots cling like they've signed a lease? September offers us a gentler path. With cooler days and softer soil from autumn rains, weeds loosen their grip almost as if the garden itself is giving us permission to tidy up without the struggle. It's a reminder that timing matters not just in gardening, but in life. When conditions are right, even the toughest tasks can become surprisingly simple. The trick is not to think of weeding as a burden, but as a quiet ritual. Take a small stool or a kneeling pad so you can work comfortably. Choose a cool morning or late afternoon when the air is kind. Using a hand fork or even just your gloved fingers, pinch the weeds at their base and lift them gently. Most will come free with little resistance. Instead of aiming to clear everything in one day, allow yourself to work in short sessions, 10 or 15 minutes at a time. Slowly but surely, the garden begins to look refreshed with each small patch you tend offering visible relief. I once visited my friend Alice, who keeps a tidy herb garden by her porch. In September, she has a ritual every evening. She walks outside with a cup of tea and pulls 5 weeds, no more, no less. "It's my way of keeping the chaos at bay," she told me. Over weeks, those small daily gestures keep her beds nearly spotless, and she never feels overwhelmed. Watching her taught me that sometimes consistency, not intensity, makes all the difference. There's also a philosophical sweetness in September weeding. Removing what doesn't belong gives space for what does. In our own lives, that might mean letting go of habits or clutter that no longer serve us. The garden becomes a mirror, showing us that clearing away the unnecessary allows the essential to thrive. And here's the best part when you weed. Now you're not just tidying for today. You're preventing thousands of seeds from spreading into next year. Each weed you remove in September saves you hours of labor in the spring. It's an investment in ease and future peace in a garden that welcomes you with less demand and more beauty. So, dear friend, don't sigh at the weeds this month. See them as an opportunity, a chance to do a little now gently and save yourself a lot later. With every root you lift, you create more space for joy, for health, and for the garden's quiet song to be heard. Dear friend, have you ever opened a jar in the middle of winter and been greeted by the fragrance of summer? That's the gift of drying herbs in September. This month, many herbs like basil, rosemary, thyme, oregano, and mint reach their peak just as the weather cools. If left outside, the frost will soon take them, but with a little care, you can capture their essence and keep it by your side all winter long. It's like bottling up sunshine and tucking it into your pantry. Harvesting is gentle work. Choose a dry morning after the dew has lifted when herbs are most flavorful. Snip stems with clean scissors, gathering them into small bundles. Tie the ends with string and hang them upside down in a cool, airy space. Perhaps a spare room, a porch, or even your kitchen window. Within a week or two, the leaves will be crisp to the touch. Strip them from the stems and store them in small jars clearly labeled. Imagine sprinkling your very own dried thyme into soup on a snowy evening, or mint leaves into a pot of tea when the world feels heavy. I remember visiting my grandmother each winter, her pantry lined with jars of dried herbs. She never bought spice bottles from the store. Instead, she'd hand me a jar of oregano from her own summer garden and say, "Taste this and you'll remember July." Even in January, her sauces carried the warmth of her garden, and each meal was a reminder that her hands had prepared something lasting. For older gardeners, drying herbs offers ease and pride. It's light work requiring no heavy lifting, and the reward is both practical and sentimental. You create your own pantry staples while also weaving stories into your cooking. And there's no rush. You can harvest just a little at a time, letting the ritual stretch gently across the month. The deeper lesson is one of preservation. Just as we cherish old photographs or pass down family recipes, drying herbs is a way of holding on to fleeting seasons. It tells us that even when something ends, a piece of it can remain sustaining and comforting us long after. September's herbs remind us that beauty and flavor don't have to vanish. With the frost, they can be carried forward, transformed and shared. So friend, as you step into your garden this month, take a basket with you. Snip a little rosemary, a bit of basil, and gather them with gratitude. You're not just harvesting herbs, you're gathering moments, flavors, and memories that will brighten the cold days to come. Dear friend, have you ever noticed how as seasons change, small visitors arrive, uninvited mice looking for warmth or ants finding their way inside the pantry gardens are much the same. In September, when the air cools and plants slow their growth, pests often make one last push to feast before winter. Aphids, beetles, slugs, and even caterpillars may appear, leaving chewed leaves or sticky residue behind. This doesn't mean your garden is failing. It simply means it's alive, part of a bigger cycle. The key is noticing and responding with gentleness rather than panic. Start by strolling slowly through your garden, cup of tea in hand, and truly looking. Turn over leaves, check stems, and notice the little details. Often you'll find only a few pests, and handpicking them is enough. If bending feels difficult, bring a folding stool or use long-handled tools designed for easy reach. For soft-bodied visitors like slugs, a sprinkle of crushed eggshells or diatomaceous earth around plants works wonders. For aphids, a gentle spray of water or a mix of mild soap and water can discourage them. None of these require harsh chemicals, just small mindful actions. I recall a story from my friend Samuel, who grew cabbages each fall. One September, he noticed tiny holes forming in the leaves. Instead of rushing for sprays, he simply spent 10 minutes each morning checking his plants. He found a few green caterpillars and gently relocated them to a wild patch beyond his garden. They deserve to eat too. He laughed, just not my cabbages. By October, his cabbages grew full and crisp, and he felt proud not only of the harvest, but of the care he'd shown in managing it. For older gardeners, this mindful approach is a blessing. It transforms pest control from a stressful chore into a calming practice of observation. You become a caretaker, not a fighter. And in the process, you protect the health of your soil, your pollinators, and the very balance of your garden. The lesson here reaches beyond gardening. Pests are like life's small troubles. Left unseen, they multiply. But noticed early and handled gently, they rarely grow overwhelming. September offers you a chance to walk slowly, to see clearly, and to act with wisdom. Checking for pests isn't about chasing perfection, it's about maintaining balance, making sure your garden and your spirit both enter autumn with peace. Dear friend, pruning in September is like editing a well-loved letter. You don't want to cross out entire paragraphs, only trim away what keeps the meaning from shining. At this time of year, many plants have finished their bold summer growth and are settling into rest. Heavy pruning would startle them, forcing energy they no longer have. Instead, think of September pruning as a gentle tidy-up, shaping rather than reshaping, guiding rather than demanding. The key is moderation. Walk your garden slowly and look for what is clearly spent. Dead flower stalks, broken branches, or stems that are rubbing against each other. A small pair of pruners, light and easy to handle, is all you need. Clip with purpose but without haste, like folding away summer clothes you no longer wear. If you keep roses, snip away faded blooms to encourage one last flush before the frost. For shrubs, simply remove what's damaged or diseased. Anything more can wait until late winter or spring. This way, you honor the plant's natural cycle rather than interrupting it. I once visited a neighbor, Margaret, who was meticulous in her September garden walks. Each afternoon, she carried a wicker basket and clipped only what truly needed removal. It's not about control, she told me, it's about kindness. Plants get tired too. That small perspective shift changed how I saw pruning, not as cutting back, but as offering relief. For those of us with limited energy, selective pruning is also merciful. It requires only short, gentle sessions. A few minutes here, a few snips there, and the results are visible. Beds look neater, plants look lighter, and you feel a quiet sense of accomplishment without strain. There is wisdom here too. Just as in life, September pruning teaches us not to overdo. Sometimes the most powerful change comes from removing just a little an unhealthy habit. A small worry, an unnecessary word, so that what matters can breathe. In the garden and in our days, less often becomes more. So take your pruners in hand this month, dear friend, and prune selectively. Not as a task to finish, but as a conversation with your plants. With every careful cut, you're saying, I see you, I respect your rest, and I'll meet you again in spring renewed. Dear friend, do you remember polishing your shoes on a Saturday night, making them ready for Sunday morning? That quiet ritual of care wasn't just about leather and polish. It was about respect for the things that carried you. September offers the same opportunity for your garden tools. After months of digging, trimming, and carrying, they too deserve a bit of kindness before the cold sets in. Cleaning and storing them now will ensure they're ready to serve you faithfully when spring returns. Begin with the basics. Gather your pruners, trowels, spades, and gloves. Fill a bucket with warm, soapy water and give each tool a gentle scrub to remove soil and sap. Dry them well. Moisture left behind can lead to rust. If bending over a sink feels hard, set up a small table outside and work standing or seated comfortably. A touch of vegetable oil rubbed onto the metal will keep rust at bay, while a quick swipe of sandpaper can smooth wooden handles. It's light, simple work, but the kind that extends the life of tools you've trusted for years. I remember visiting my Uncle Frank, who gardened well into his 90s. Each fall, he had a ritual. He lined his tools in a row, sharpened the edges of his spade with care, and wrapped the handles in cloth. "These are my companions," he said. "They've walked the seasons with me. The least I can do is put them to bed properly." His shed always smelled of linseed oil and earth, a place where respect and memory mingled. For older gardeners, clean tools also mean safer tools. Sharp pruners cut with less effort, preventing strain. Smooth handles protect arthritic hands from splinters. And having everything in order saves energy. When spring arrives, you'll know exactly where to find what you need, ready and waiting. There's a deeper lesson here too. Caring for tools is a reminder that small acts of maintenance prevent larger burdens later. Just as a kind word preserves friendship or a checkup preserves health, wiping a trowel today saves you from replacing it tomorrow. It is a quiet practice of stewardship, of honoring what has helped you create beauty. So before the frost settles, take an afternoon to tend to your tools. Lay them clean and shining in their places, and feel the quiet satisfaction of knowing you've closed one chapter well. Your garden rests, your tools rest, and you too can rest, with the comfort that everything is prepared for another season of growth. Dear friend, do you remember swapping out summer curtains for heavier autumn ones, or setting a new tablecloth to welcome the season? Refreshing your container gardens in September carries the same spirit. Those pots on your porch, balcony, or patio that once overflowed with petunias, geraniums, or impatiens may now look weary. Their blooms fade, their leaves droop, and the joy they once brought begins to dim. But with a little care, you can breathe new life into them, turning tired containers into vibrant autumn displays. The process is gentle. Begin by removing plants that have clearly finished their season. Loosen the soil lightly with your hands or a small trowel, then mix in a scoop of compost to refresh the nutrients. Choose hardy, cool season plants, mums in shades of gold and burgundy, ornamental cabbages with purple-tinged leaves, or pansies that smile even through chilly nights. Nestle them into your containers, arranging them as you might a bouquet. If lifting heavy pots feels burdensome, keep your containers smaller or use lightweight plastic ones dressed inside wicker baskets for charm without strain. I think often of my friend Clara, who lives in a retirement community with only a small patio. Each September, she delights in swapping her summer pots for fall ones. She sets a pair of mums by her front door, tucks in a few pansies, and adds a small pumpkin or two. "It's my way of saying, 'Welcome,'" she told me. Neighbors always stop to admire, and Clara beams with pride, proof that beauty doesn't require a large garden, only care and imagination. Refreshing container gardens also offers emotional renewal. It's a visible reminder that while seasons change, there's always room for color, for joy, for a touch of surprise. Each new bloom you plant whispers resilience, showing that endings are not final, but chances to begin again in a different form. For older gardeners, this task is especially kind. Container gardening allows you to work at waist or table height, sparing your back and knees. It invites creativity without the demands of a sprawling yard. And it ensures that even as the garden outside slows, your personal corner remains alive and welcoming. So, dear friend, take a moment this month to refresh those containers. With a few new plants, perhaps a decorative gourd or two, your porch or patio will glow with autumn's warmth. It's not about grand gestures, but about creating little pockets of joy, reminders each time you walk past that beauty is still very much alive. Dear friend, planting bulbs in September is like writing letters to your future self. You tuck them quietly into the soil now, and months later, when winter has passed and spring light returns, they emerge as joyful surprises. Tulips, daffodils, crocuses, and hyacinths. Each bulb carries a secret, a promise sealed in a simple brown package. September's cool but not yet frozen soil is the perfect time to hide these treasures where they'll rest until the earth warms again. The act itself is gentle and simple. Choose a spot with sunlight, loosen the soil, and dig small holes about 2 to 3 times as deep as the bulbs are tall. If bending feels difficult, raised beds or container pots work wonderfully. Tulips in a pot by the doorway can be just as magical as a full garden bed. Place the bulbs with their pointed ends up, nestle them in, and cover with soil. Water them once to settle them in, then let nature take over. Through fall and winter, they will sleep beneath the frost, quietly preparing their colorful debut. I once knew a man named Walter who made a tradition of planting bulbs with his grandchildren every September. Each child would choose a handful, and together they would bury them in the garden. Come spring, each grandchild would proudly point to the blooms they had planted, their joy blooming alongside the flowers. Walter used to say, "This is how I make sure the children come back every spring to see what they planted." The garden became not just a place of beauty, but of shared memory. For older gardeners, bulbs are among the easiest gifts to give yourself. They require little effort, ask no tending through winter, and reward you with an explosion of color when you need it most. Imagine walking outside in April, still wrapped in a sweater, and finding daffodils nodding in the breeze. It feels like hope itself, rising straight from the soil. The lesson here is patience and faith. Bulbs remind us that even in seasons of rest, important work is happening unseen. Much like our own lives, where quiet moments often prepare us for growth we can't yet imagine. By planting bulbs in September, you are not only planning for spring, you are planting hope, assuring yourself that beauty lies ahead. Dear friend, think of your garden's soil as a dear companion, one who has worked hard all summer to nourish tomatoes, beans, cucumbers, and flowers. By September, that companion is weary. Just as we wrap a shawl around our shoulders when the chill sets in, the soil, too, needs a protective covering. This is where cover crops come in. Rye clover or vetch sown now act as blankets and healers for the earth. They protect the soil from erosion, enrich it with nutrients, and give it time to restore itself before the next season. Planting cover crops is easier than many think. Once your summer beds are cleared, simply scatter seeds across the loosened soil. Rake them in lightly and water once to settle them. They'll sprout quickly in the cool September air, covering the ground with a gentle green carpet. If you have raised beds, this task is even kinder. No heavy bending, just a sprinkle of seeds across the surface. By spring, these cover crops can be trimmed and worked back into the soil, creating a natural compost that enriches your beds better than any store-bought fertilizer. I remember my neighbor Doris, a widow who loved her vegetable patch but often grew weary by fall. One year she tried sowing clover as a cover crop. By October, her garden looked like a lush green meadow instead of a bare, tired patch. In spring, when she turned the clover back into the soil, she told me with a smile, "It's like my garden had a good night's sleep." That season, her vegetables thrived with a vigor she hadn't seen before, and she never skipped the practice again. For older gardeners, cover crops are a quiet blessing. They reduce the need for hauling compost or spreading fertilizers by hand. They minimize weeds, sparing you from endless pulling. And they protect the soil without constant care. Nature does most of the work while you rest. The deeper reflection here is simple care for what cares for you. Soil, often unseen, gives us the gift of life year after year. By sowing cover crops in September, you're practicing gratitude, offering your garden rest and nourishment in return for all it has given you. Just as relationships thrive when tended gently, so does the earth beneath our feet. So this September, consider scattering seeds not for yourself, but for the soil. Come spring, the earth will repay you with health, fertility, and abundance. It is one of the easiest, most loving acts you can give back to your garden and to yourself. Dear friend, do you remember setting out jars as a child to catch the rain, marveling at how quickly they filled? That simple joy is something we can return to in September, but now with a practical purpose. Collecting rainwater is one of the easiest ways to care for your garden and lighten your workload. As autumn showers arrive, every drop that falls from your roof can be saved to nourish your plants later. It is like putting pennies in a savings jar, small and steady yet valuable over time. The setup doesn't need to be complicated. A simple rain barrel placed beneath a downspout is often enough. For those who prefer lighter tasks, even a row of clean buckets or large tubs will do the job. Once filled, you can dip in with a watering can or attach a small spigot to the barrel for easy flow. The water, soft and chemical-free, is kinder to plants than treated tap water. Herbs, container flowers, and even houseplants seem to perk up instantly when given rainwater instead of what comes from the faucet. I recall my friend Helen, who gardened well into her 80s. She kept 3 barrels lined neatly against the back of her garage, painted them with cheerful sunflowers, and called them her garden wells. She told me, "They save my back, my bills, and my conscience." Whenever neighbors visited, she proudly showed them how the barrels had cut her water use in half. More than that, she found delight in the thought of making the most of what nature offered freely. For older gardeners, collecting rainwater offers both ease and independence. It reduces the need to drag hoses across the yard or lift heavy watering cans repeatedly. A barrel placed near your beds or porch makes the task lighter and more accessible. And in times of drought or restrictions, that stored water becomes a comfort proof that you have prepared with foresight. The lesson here is stewardship. Rainwater reminds us that resources once overlooked can be precious when valued. Just as we hold on to old family stories or reuse jars for seeds, collecting rain honors the cycles of giving and receiving. It's a small act of respect for nature, for the future, and for ourselves. So, dear friend, as the September rains begin to fall, let your garden join in the gathering. Each drop you save becomes a gift you'll use later, a reminder that simple preparation can bring both beauty and ease. With every barrel or bucket filled, you're not just storing water, you're storing peace of mind. Dear friend, have you ever noticed how a freshly swept porch feels like a warm welcome, even if nothing else has changed? In September, tidying your garden's pathways and edges creates that same feeling, an instant sense of calm and order without heavy work. After months of summer growth, grass may spill over walkways, weeds creep between stones, and borders lose their shape. Taking time now to neaten these areas not only beautifies your garden, but also makes it safer and easier to enjoy through fall. Start small. Take a broom or a lightweight rake and clear fallen leaves from walkways. If gravel paths have shifted, smooth them gently with the back of your rake. Along borders, use hand shears or scissors to trim back grass that sprawls into beds. For raised edges or stone borders, a simple sweep can reveal their lines again, giving the whole garden a refreshed look. If bending is difficult, a long-handled broom or edging tool allows you to work upright, sparing your back. A little effort here can make the whole garden feel cared for, even if the beds themselves are resting. I remember my neighbor Lydia, who struggled with arthritis but insisted on keeping her garden paths neat. Each September, she spent half an hour a day sweeping her flagstone walkway and clipping the grass edges with a pair of old kitchen shears. "I can't do what I once did," she told me, "but I can make a clean path for myself." Her visitors always remarked on how peaceful her garden felt, and I realized it was those simple, tidy lines that made the space feel so inviting. For older gardeners, this practice is especially kind. Clear pathways reduce the risk of tripping on hidden stones or slippery leaves. Trimmed edges make beds easier to see and enjoy even from a distance. And the sense of order brings quiet satisfaction, the same joy as folding a blanket neatly or arranging books on a shelf. The lesson is this: sometimes beauty comes not from adding more, but from revealing what is already there. By tidying pathways and edges in September, you give structure to your garden's fading colors and prepare it for the restful months ahead. It's a gesture of care that requires little strain but leaves a lasting impression. So take your broom, dear friend, and let your garden's paths guide you. With each sweep and trim, you're not just cleaning, you're creating a clear way forward for your plants and for yourself. Dear friend, have you ever watched a bird land on a feeder, its tiny chest rising and falling as it takes a quick meal, then darting away with gratitude written in its wings? September is the perfect time to begin feeding birds, for as the garden slows, natural food sources begin to dwindle. Insects fade berries thin and seeds scatter quickly. By placing a few feeders or shallow dishes of water, you extend hospitality to these small travelers, helping them gather strength for the colder months ahead. Setting up is wonderfully simple. A basic feeder filled with sunflower seeds or millet can attract finches, sparrows, and chickadees. Sweat cakes, which are easy to buy or make, offer fat and energy for woodpeckers and nuthatches. If lifting heavy bags of seed feels difficult, choose smaller containers that you can manage easily. Place feeders where you can enjoy them from a window, turning birdwatching into a daily pleasure. And don't forget water. A shallow dish refreshed regularly can be as important as food, especially as nights grow colder. I once visited my cousin Ellen, who had limited mobility but adored birds. She placed a small feeder just outside her living room window. Every morning she sipped her coffee while watching cardinals flash red against the autumn leaves. "They're my company," she told me. "Even when I can't get outside, I feel connected." Her joy wasn't just in the birds themselves, but in the sense of belonging they brought, the reminder that her garden was still alive with movement and song. For older gardeners, feeding birds is also a way of extending the garden's life beyond the growing season. While flowers fade and vegetables are harvested, the sight of birds fluttering in for a meal brings energy and delight. It turns September afternoons into a kind of theater where every visitor brings its own character and song. The deeper lesson here is generosity. Birds ask little and give much. Their songs brighten silence, their presence brings wonder, and their resilience in the cold reminds us of courage. By feeding them, we participate in a cycle of giving that reaches beyond our own needs. So, dear friend, as the days shorten, scatter a little seed and set out fresh water. Then sit back and let the show begin. Each feathered visitor carries a reminder: even in seasons of decline, life is still arriving, still thriving, still singing. Dear friend, do you remember keeping a diary in your younger years, jotting down what mattered most at the end of each day? Creating garden notes in September is much the same. It's a gentle way of capturing the story of your season while it's still fresh in your mind. What thrived, what struggled, what brought you joy, and what you'd like to try differently next year. All of it becomes part of your garden's memory. Without these notes, those small but valuable details can slip away like fallen leaves in the wind. This task is as flexible as you'd like it to be. Some gardeners keep a formal journal with dates, diagrams, and lists. Others simply jot a few sentences in a notebook or even slip plant tags into envelopes with scribbled comments. For those who prefer less writing, a smartphone photo album labeled September Garden can serve just as well. The goal isn't perfection, but memory. Your future self will be grateful for the hints. Was it the marigolds that bloomed longer than expected? Did the cucumbers struggle in too much shade? Did a thrift store trellis prove surprisingly sturdy? These are notes worth saving. I once knew Mrs. Porter, a retired teacher who kept a 3-ring binder for her garden. Each fall she taped in seed packets, added photos of her beds, and wrote little reflections in the margins. "This is my textbook," she joked, "and the exam is spring." Her binder grew into a kind of family heirloom with decades of wisdom tucked between its pages. Her children now use it as a guide, her words echoing in every season. For older gardeners, note-taking is also an act of slowing down. It shifts the focus from physical labor to reflection, allowing you to savor what you've done rather than rush ahead. It is gentle work that can be done from a chair by the window with a warm drink nearby. And it creates a thread of continuity, ensuring that your garden isn't just a patch of soil, but a living story recorded year by year. The deeper lesson is that reflection enriches experience. By pausing to write down your observations, you're not only preparing for a better harvest next year, you're honoring the present moment. You're saying, "This mattered. This was beautiful. This was worth remembering." So, dear friend, before September slips away, take a little time to create garden notes. Whether it's a single page or a full journal, you'll find joy in revisiting those words when the soil warms again. In the quiet months of winter, those notes will be your bridge back to the garden. A reminder that your hands and heart created something truly meaningful. Dear friend, after months of tending, sowing, watering, and harvesting, September invites you to do something we often forget: pause. Rest and reflection are not idle acts. They are part of gardening itself. Just as the soil needs to recover and plants need dormancy, so too do we. This is the month to sit in your favorite chair, perhaps with a blanket and a cup of tea, and simply look at what your hands and heart have shaped. The colors may be fading, the blooms fewer, but the story of the season remains vibrant in memory. Think back to the first sprouts you celebrated in spring, or the way tomatoes swelled in summer sun. Remember the joy of sharing cucumbers with a neighbor or cutting flowers for your table. Each of those moments is the harvest of your effort. Reflection helps you see the abundance not only in vegetables or blossoms, but in experiences and lessons, and in the quiet satisfaction of creating beauty from earth. I once visited a community garden in late September where benches were placed between nearly empty beds. Gardeners sat together swapping stories instead of seeds, laughing about the things that worked and the things that didn't. One man said, "My zucchini failed, but I made a new friend." Another woman shared that she had finally seen monarch butterflies land on her milkweed. Their reflections turned the season's imperfections into treasures. For older gardeners, rest is not a luxury, but wisdom. We no longer push through fatigue or measure worth in busyness. We understand that sitting among the fading blooms is just as meaningful as planting them months before. Reflection also allows us to see the bigger picture, the resilience of nature, the cycles of life, and the beauty of second chances. So, dear friend, as September closes, give yourself permission to rest and reflect. Keep company with your memories, write them down if you wish, or simply hold them in your heart. The garden will wait, the soil will heal, and spring will return. But in this moment, honor yourself for all you've created. Rest is not an ending. It is the gentle pause before another beginning. Dear friend, after months of tending, sowing, watering, and harvesting, September invites you to do something we often forget. Pause. Rest and reflection are not idle acts. They are part of gardening itself. Just as the soil needs to recover and plants need dormancy, so too do we. This is the month to sit in your favorite chair, perhaps with a blanket and a cup of tea, and simply look at what your hands and heart have shaped. The colors may be fading, the blooms fewer, but the story of the season remains vibrant in memory. Think back to the first sprouts you celebrated in spring, or the way tomatoes swelled in summer sun. Remember the joy of sharing cucumbers with a neighbor or cutting flowers for your table. Each of those moments is the harvest of your effort. Reflection helps you see the abundance not only in vegetables or blossoms, but in experiences and lessons, and in the quiet satisfaction of creating beauty from earth. I once visited a community garden in late September where benches were placed between nearly empty beds. Gardeners sat together swapping stories instead of seeds, laughing about the things that worked and the things that didn't. One man said, "My zucchini failed, but I made a new friend." Another woman shared that she had finally seen monarch butterflies land on her milkweed. Their reflections turned the season's imperfections into treasures. For older gardeners, rest is not a luxury, but wisdom. We no longer push through fatigue or measure worth in busyness. We understand that sitting among the fading blooms is just as meaningful as planting them months before. Reflection also allows us to see the bigger picture, the resilience of nature, the cycles of life, and the beauty of second chances. So, dear friend, as September closes, give yourself permission to rest and reflect. Keep company with your memories, write them down if you wish, or simply hold them in your heart. The garden will wait, the soil will heal, and spring will return. But in this moment, honor yourself for all you've created. Rest is not an ending, it is the gentle pause before another beginning.